I was reading through the Financial Times, and Philip Delve-Broughton, who's an author who wrote Ahead of the Curve, a book on what it means to be an MBA student. He's an author that spent 2 years as an MBA student at HBS. And he was giving his reasoning behind why the whole financial collapse happened. And he said that one of the reasons he thought it happened is that managers out there all of a sudden believed that they were leaders. And that part of the reason why they believed they were leaders is that business schools had claimed to be teaching leadership for a long time, when in fact, A, nobody can teach leadership, and business schools, if anybody could teach leadership, business schools are in no position to do that. I had a sort of a gut reaction to that it was just wrong. And so I spoke to Amy and to Cade, and I asked them, would you be interested in writing some sort of response to this? And they both agreed that it was something that we should do, both, again, because we personally believed it was wrong, and because this is not what Yale SOM is about. And so we took it from there. We just started bouncing ideas around.
I think it felt kind of involuntary at some point, you know. It was one of those garage project kind of things where it wasn't the main thing we were doing during the day, but we'd sneak off and have a conversation and kind of work on it because we felt like compelled to respond to this line of reasoning and this rhetoric out there.
It's one of the fastest things I think I've ever written. In part, this involuntary nature of it. It felt like it poured out of us, the arguments that we had to the contrary and why we felt so strongly about that. And part of that is informed by all of our roles here in the School of Management and what we do here and what we care so much about as a school and how we're trying to educate the students around leadership for business and society. So I think we were well positioned to take part in that part of the conversation.
It definitely fit in with the challenges we've experienced around the leadership development program here. So we've taught in that off and on over the years since we began that program. And it's an ongoing challenge for the school to figure out how to do that. But because we've been grappling with those issues, I think we were kind of primed to talk about this issue.
Even though we disagreed with the general idea of the original Financial Times article that business schools had nothing to do teaching leadership, we actually agreed with the notion that they are not teaching it properly today, right? And I think this is where this idea of the oath as an artifact for the things that we see wrong with leadership education in business schools comes in.
It wasn't where we started, but it became a focal point, and it's not a bad way for us to think about what we like and what we don't like about leadership in business school, though. And for that reason, it kind of took center stage.
So the MBA oath started a couple of years back at the Harvard Business School. It was drafted there, and a voluntary commitment was made on behalf of, by a certain percentage of the students who took the oath that basically they're saying they'll not engage in behavior that is unethical, takes advantage of others in ways that are unethical, and that they vow to follow this code of conduct, leaving Harvard Business School for the rest of their careers.
One of the things that we see reflected in the oath very clearly is this idea of like, well, there are these people out there who are managers who've acted unethically, but I am vowing right now to not do that when I'm in that situation, right? And if I say that, basically what I'm signaling is that in my heart of hearts, I believe that I'm somehow different from that person. That there's something wrong with the character or with the values or with the will of that individual who engaged in unethical behavior, and that I'm stronger, I'm different. And what that signals also is, A, that I believe that it's all driven by individual personalities, that all that we observe is driven by individuals. And B, and related to this, that I don't think that social pressures or economic pressures are driving some of these behaviors in any way.
This notion that behavior is driven by personality rather than situation is a very well-known mistake that people make. It's one of the fundamental observations in sociology and social psychology that a key determinant of behavior is actually the situation and the situational pressures, and that people underestimate that. And so this characterization that Rodrigo's just given is exactly what we think the problem is, because people say, well, it's just about, if someone did something wrong, it's because they're a weak character. And they don't appreciate that it's about those situational forces. And the real problem with that is that they're going to find one day those same situational forces on themselves. And if they think it's all about character, they're not going to be prepared for it. A general issue here to take on, as much as we want to take on, is this issue of compartmentalization. The idea that, and that's exactly what our curriculum reform is supposed to be challenging. And so bringing ethics into that discussion should work very well. But compartmentalization is a huge issue. And one of my favorite parts of the article, actually, is the only truly empirical part of the article, and that is Rodrigo's observation from some of his classroom exercises.
I've helped teach a set of workshops, leadership workshops, in other MBA programs and in other places. And one of the most interesting things we have found is that when you ask MBA students to talk about who they see as role models in the business world, they list a number of people, and the similarity of the lists across groups is amazing. There's more than 90% correlation in the list, and it's exactly the names you would expect. And so they list the names, and then they list the qualities that they ascribe to these people. What's been striking to me is that usually it takes about maybe 45 minutes or an hour of discussion before the word honesty comes up as a value in business, or before compassion or caring for employees comes up. Once it comes up, the students show that they care deeply about this. So I don't believe that it's the students don't care about this. But when you ask them about a business situation, they compartmentalize, as Cade was saying. They believe that that a different set of values apply in the human world and in the business world.
I have been overwhelmed. I'd wished, hoped that people would like it, that the response would be good. I have been bowled over by the number of students who've come up to me to say how proud they are to have matriculated at a school where the faculty would write a piece like the one we wrote. That's been enormously gratifying. We've all been hearing from alumni who we've taught over the years who are writing us with similar messages. I think we feel very supported by the current student body and also the students who have come before them.
Right, and we've had some interesting reactions from faculty at other schools, and also from just general, people out there who read the piece, and some of them have actually proposed ideas. We recently had a conversation with a person who runs business war games and simulations, and thinking about whether that would be one way to incorporate experiences into the classroom. We had an interesting conversation, an interesting correspondence with the dean of another business school and with other faculty of other business schools. And some of them agree with our piece more than others, but it's definitely been an interesting conversation.
Our favorite line from the piece, and I believe Cade wrote this line. I'm almost positive, so he did write the line. Most of the emails that I've gotten from people in my own personal life have written that line in the email to me to say, best line of the whole op-ed. So this idea.
The line is along the lines of, we believe in analytics. Most companies need more analytics, but analytics are not a substitute for values. Is that right?
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
So, and part of the origin of that, I think there's two origins of that phrase. One is that in the original Financial Times piece, what the author was saying was that that's what business schools are supposed to do, teaching the students analytical tools to make better managerial decisions, as if that was the only dimension. The second origin for that is that is what we do. We give them a lot of analytical tools in a way that almost frames decisions as purely analytical. That phrase, if there was one phrase that summarizes how we feel about the entire endeavor of teaching leadership in business schools, I think it would be that.
Absolutely.